to the both of you. Also just want to remind our guests on the call that just to keep your lines muted, and then toward the end we will have a chance to ask questions of the presenters. And then also if you could keep your questions just to one per person to begin with so everyone can have an opportunity. So, so Jamie, I don't know if you're starting as our South Dakota representative, but I'll just let you guys go ahead and share with us your thoughts and updates.
Well, thank you very much for broadcasting live tonight from beautiful Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Although I was in very rural South Dakota, I kind of call it a little bit of an island, Mobridge, South Dakota, for the weekend, and that's my hometown. And so I am a South Dakotan, but returned recently. I got back here about a year ago. I had left for a few decades for the Army. But it's my pleasure tonight to introduce my boss and our regional administrator, Daniel Norberg. And Dan is joining us from Colorado Springs, I think, unless you're in Denver and you're off, Dan. And we have another colleague joining us too. But and Dan, go ahead and kick us off with a little bit of background on where we're at with SBA with these programs.
Sure. No, thanks everybody, and good evening. Dan Nordberg, I'm coming to you live from Colorado Springs in my basement. So great to be with you, and great to spend some time talking with Farm Bureau and really just sharing more about the inclusion of agricultural enterprises for both the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as most recently our Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. And that's been really somewhat unique for us at SBA because for more than 30 years, we've really been prohibited by law from providing disaster assistance to agricultural producers. However, as a result of the unprecedented situation that we find ourselves, as well as the actions of the administration and Congress, farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural enterprises will now have the access to the emergency working capital necessary to hopefully provide some viability and stability to really the nation's important supply chains that we have. And I'll tell you, to that end, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that was the most recent thing as well that came into being for additional working capital for ag producers. So between these two products, it's really been a whirlwind time for us at SBA the past 2 months, and certainly with our ag producers at the forefront of our mind. Now, for a little bit of context, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, I'll start with that, has been what SBA has traditionally utilized to respond to a natural disaster in a specific community. So we're talking everything from a wildfire to a hurricane. That's what we've utilized it for. It wasn't until March when Congress passed the Coronavirus Preparedness and Supplemental Appropriation Act that we were given permission to use it for small businesses adversely impacted by COVID-19. And then more recently, with the expansion of the CARES Act, where Congress authorized this program for the use of agricultural enterprises. Now, the other program we're going to be talking about tonight is the Paycheck Protection Program. And over the past 2 months, SBA has dispersed over $500 billion in PPP loans. And just a little context on that, that's more loans than we have done over the past 2 decades in just that short amount of time. But in spite of that, we still have $129 billion remaining in that program. So there really is plenty of opportunity still for farmers, agricultural enterprises to participate. And that's what we want to talk about tonight, answer your questions, and hopefully encourage you to make that application. So to discuss in greater depth, my pleasure at this time to reintroduce once again Jamie Wood, our great district director here in South Dakota. So Jamie, take it away.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up some slides that are going to highlight mostly what I'll be talking about is PPP, and then our colleague from California, Rick Jenkins from the SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance is joining us too, and he will also be going over more in depth on the EIDL. So we'll get to the PPP first because we really want to show you how both programs are working, like Dan mentioned. And even though the EIDL was most recently opened for agriculture applications, the PPP has been opened all along for the Paycheck Protection Program. So we're going to go ahead and bring this up, and host disabled the participant screen sharing, it says. So I'm not sure if I can bring those up for you. Do you have that, Crystal?
Sure. Lowell, are you able to allow her to share her screen?
But meanwhile, I can talk to these updates. So after doing this for almost 3 months, we have a lot of it really, memorized, but it's a moving, it's a moving platform because they've been making updates as we've gone along over several weeks to make it more user-friendly and accessible to all types of. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and bring up my slides so I can just kind of go through those updates with you right now. And just as Dan mentioned on some of the background, I wanted to give you just some wave top dates. So the CARES Act was signed by President Trump on March 27th, and that's the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It's called the CARES Act. It was really meant to provide emergency assistance and healthcare response for individuals, families, and businesses impacted and affected by the coronavirus pandemic. Well, through that bill, that CARES Act, it did establish the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as PPP, and that is administered by the SBA or through the SBA. However, we actually rely on SBA partner lenders across the United States, and there's over 5,400 of them across the United States, hundreds right here in South Dakota, that actually have been doing the facilitation for the last several weeks for the PPP. And then on April 24th, the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act was signed, and this provided additional funding and authority for the PPP. And then as of June 5th, we had the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020, which further offered some modification and flexibility to this program. So for the Paycheck Protection Program, it actually provides, it's meant to provide 8 weeks of payroll expenses for a small business. And this right now is available to all industries. And they've really reduced a lot of the barriers that initially were part of the PPP program. And so many different types of businesses, and inside of the industries, even the different types of, just the uniqueness of many different types of businesses now are actually eligible for this program, the PPP program. So a little bit more about it on how they come up with 8 weeks of payroll, how they determine what that loan amount can be. So they've taken an equation that really is based off of, for most businesses, 12 months worth of payroll. They divide it by 12, and then they times it times 2.5. So they multiply it by 2.5. Now there are some seasonal businesses that go off of a different formula, and we've been working really closely with the lenders across South Dakota, and this includes the rural lenders in the small towns like my hometown, Morridge, South Dakota, and so every corner of South Dakota and in between, from Sioux Falls to Rapid City and all the other places that are rural, because those are the only 2 urban areas in South Dakota. We worked really closely with hundreds of lenders, and we have at least now weekly training sessions with them. But early on, when it first started, for the first probably about 6 weeks, we were having daily conversations with the lenders to make sure that they had the information they needed to make sure that this program was in place. So they get the 8 weeks of payroll, determined, or the amount of the loan. And this has been modified now, where it was initially meant to be used over 8 weeks, but now it can be used over 24 weeks to allow some additional cushion for small businesses. What we found as this program was being rolled out and leveraged is that that 8-week time frame was really providing some barriers for small businesses. And we didn't have all the answers because we didn't know a lot about the pandemic. or how it was really truly impacting small businesses. And this includes agriculture producers as well too, who have a payroll and have employees. And so what we found out as we moved through the program with the small businesses is that they weren't able in many instances to bring all of their paid employees back for various reasons, either health reasons or psychological barriers, maybe, the fear of coming back to work. And so for businesses that totally shut down, a lot of this happened like with the restaurant industry, for instance. Many of them shut down for several weeks, and so when they came to bring back their employees, it was tough to bring them back. Many of the employees had small children in school. Schools were closed, daycares were closed, so really it was really, really tough. And so that got modified, and so now that payroll can be met over 24 weeks. Applications are made again through SBA approved lenders. 60% of the actual payroll must be met with a PPP loan. So 60%. Now that was reduced. Originally it was 75%. That got reduced with the Flexibility Act, so 60% now. That other 40% can be used for different types of operational expenses, including utilities, mortgage interest, or lease. And so those are some operational expenses. The maximum loan for PPP goes up to $10 million. And believe it or not, we've had some industries inside of South Dakota, some small businesses that actually have gone up to almost $10 million. And people ask us a lot of times, like, well, how can a small business, if it's small, actually use up to $10 million on their payroll within, 8-week period? And now it's 24, but originally it was 8. And we said actually for some of those small businesses, they're still considered small, even if they have 500 people. So 500 or less is considered small. But there are certain industry size standards for some industries, like manufacturing and even maybe small airlines, for instance, that have at least 500 or maybe up to 1,500 employees. So you can make that payroll go away really quickly, for up to $10 million when you have that many employees and staff. Now, these PPP loans are meant to be forgiven at the end of 8 or 24 weeks. And there is an option for businesses that were already in the program to be able to select if they want to have the 8-week or the 24-week request for forgiveness, and they do that through their lender. But the forgiveness, again, it can be requested through the lenders. There's a process, and actually a lot of lenders are going through this with small businesses that already got their PPP loans and already have used it up within the initial 8 weeks. And they do that application for forgiveness through the lender. The lender has 60 days to decide if the small business has met the criteria for forgiveness, and nearly all of that loan can be forgiven. Now, whatever is not forgiven, it can go out to a 5-year maturity. Originally, it was 2 years. Now it can go out to 5 years, and that's at a 1% interest, and that's for any unforgiven funds. And the SBA also authorized. SBA was also authorized to provide new and existing 7A borrower payments for the first 6 months. So SBA is paying the initial 6 months for the payment. So whatever's left, or the interest rather, whatever is left after that will be at 1% interest for up to 5 years. I wanted to talk a little bit about, just kind of give you an idea of where we're at with the program, and we're just about done with the PPP, and then we'll jump over to the EIDL. But nationally, we've done over 4.5 million, almost 4.6 million loans actually for PPP, and that has equated to a lot. Like Dan said, about $500 billion worth of loans right there. That's over 5,400 lenders participating nationally. The average loan size nationally is $112,000. But let's talk a little bit about South Dakota, where we're at. So over 21,500 small businesses in all industries, so agriculture is included in this as well, have actually leveraged the PPP loans in the last 2 months. And that equates to over $1.6 billion. And so it's just really fantastic to be able to have that sort of emergency infusion into our economy. As the district director here, I get to talk to all different types of businesses all over South Dakota, and the success stories that we have coming in are just unbelievable, really how this program, along with IDLE, have really saved these businesses, helped them to keep the doors open, the lights on, and to keep their employees paid. So that has been really wonderful. And the employees were able to stay paid even if they weren't at work. And so that's the beauty of the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, the average loan size in South Dakota was about $76,500. Okay, and there are some other lending programs that SBA has right now too that I wanted to mention, because the lending products that we have, they're guaranteed lending. We don't do anything direct. We don't do any direct lending. We used to a lot of years ago, but now we do everything through lenders or nonprofits that are intermediaries.
About that, so 76,000. That's only what, 5 times bigger than what we were. Our people, you're
So
full time.
Mike, please mute your mic.
Jamie. So Jamie, sorry, this is Lowell. I'm with Farm Bureau. How are you? I accidentally made you the host. Is there a way that you can?
You made me the host?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to. I accidentally punched that button.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you send that back my way? Because I bet we have people waiting as well.
Okay, absolutely. Where do I do this at?
If you just click on South Dakota Farm Bureau, I believe, and that's the one that's recording. And you can designate. Because yes, I have lost all control to mute anyone and everyone else, so sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay.
And if not, we can probably just go on like this
Sorry,
as well.
I don't see anywhere where I have that. Sorry. And they say when all else fails, you're supposed to sit there and smile.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption.
I tell you what, if anybody, right now I don't see anybody in queue to let in.
Okay.
But, and I'm almost done, and I'll turn it to Rick, and then I will put that turn back to you. So
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Came out today.
Today.
Yes.
Well, that's a lot of, huh?
Well, no wonder
Okay.
nobody's on.
So, but anybody else who's on the phone or on video, if you could please mute your phone or your presentation, not presentation, but your profile online, that would be really helpful, because we're hearing some background chatter on here. Okay, so I wanted to talk also a little bit about our other lending programs. So we do have several other guaranteed programs that are out there that are eligible for ag producers. They're not eligible for actual farms that have residents on them, but we do have different types of programs like our microloan that can be used. It's $500 to $50,000, and that can be used for operational expenses. We also have a 7A program, a 504 loan program, and we do have some surety bonds too. So those different types of programs can be used for a lot of operational expenses. We do have an express line of credit right now that is used for operational expenses again, and it's a fixed interest, rotating, revolving line of credit that a small business can leverage. So that is something to consider. Your local lenders that are SBA lenders are the ones that can actually help you navigate through what lending products might be the best. And believe it or not, all of the loan products are on an uptick right now. So even though we've had COVID-19 and the threat of this pandemic that's just been, having its clutches into the globe at this point, we're really seeing a lot of businesses that are still starting and growing all over South Dakota. I got a readout today on some of our loan programs, and they have actually exceeded the same time that, from last year. So the rates are really good right now, and there's a lot of opportunity out there still. So if people are looking for lending, please do consider SBA, and it can be leveraged right alongside any USDA lending as well. So we're trying to get lenders smart on that. And then just a kind of a final parting a comment. I wanted to give a little plug for our network of business counselors that provide information, education, technical assistance, and training absolutely free of charge. So we're a federal agency. We have just over 2,000 employees nationwide, 68 SBA district offices. There's only one here in South Dakota, but some big states like California that have a lot of people in a lot of industry have 6. So here we're located in Sioux Falls, but we also have an alternate work site, an office out in Rapid City, and I have a team of 7 currently that cover the entire state. Most of us are here in Sioux Falls, and one is in Rapid City, but we all cover the entire state, and we're here to help. But we do it also, the business counseling and the technical assistance, through SBA federally funded partners. So the small business development centers, there's a network of, I believe there's 6 or 7 of them stationed across the state. We also have SCORE, which is a national nonprofit, and it's comprised of a variety of industry experts, and they have over 11,000 volunteers across the United States. So SCORE.org is where you can find some. And SCORE also has a partnership with the USDA's Farm Service Agency to provide agriculture expertise too. And again, that's free of charge. We do have a women's business center. It's SDCEO Women's Business Center. It's located at Black Hills State out in Spearfish. They serve the whole state too. They have wonderful expertise that they provide for marketing and outreach, cybersecurity, business development, and so they really have wonderful professional development. And we do have a veteran business outreach center too. So if we have any veterans in the audience, we do have what we call a VBOC, Veteran Business Outreach Center. The Dakotas, they're up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and they serve both North and South Dakota. All era veterans, active duty military, Guard, Reserve, military spouses, caregivers, and that demographic is near and dear to my heart. I'm an Army veteran. My dad is a Navy veteran, and I have 2 out of my 3 adult children are in the military. So we really want you to know that we do have Veteran Business Outreach Center help there for anybody that might be a veteran. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague and Dan's colleague, Rick. He is out in California, and he's going to be talking to you a little bit about the EIDL and what it is. He's from the Office of Disaster Assistance, and he has the deeper knowledge of the program. And locally, we can always help you facilitate through that application, and also, some of the questions that you might have on that too. But Rick, are you here with us? Okay. I wonder if Rick is one of the people in the I don't know if he might be standing by in the room, and I don't see where I can let him in for this.
Yeah, he's in there. It's the 916 number. It's the 916 number.
The 916 number. 916. Okay. Okay. So here we go. Unmute. Okay. Rick, can you? I just unmuted you.
Jamie, can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good deal. So, good evening, everyone, from what appears to be cloudy California, not sunny California tonight, so it's kind of a nice respite from the hot sun. Dan, it's good to hear from you, and Jamie, it's always good to hear from you as well. Let me go back to what Dan said originally when he first opened with his comments. He was absolutely correct. This is the first time in about 35 years that SBA's disaster loan program has been made available to agricultural businesses and producers. That's something that Congress took us out of a long time ago and placed it with the USDA. But for this COVID event, it brought it back. And so on May the 4th, SBA began accepting new economic injury disaster loan applications as well as economic injury disaster loan advance applications in order to provide this unprecedented relief, not only to America's small businesses, but to U.S. agricultural businesses as well. At this time, agricultural businesses, including producers, can apply to our program to receive funding in the form of working capital loans. Agricultural businesses can apply through our streamlined application portal, which is still open and it's up and running. And the application process is very, very simple. It's mostly self-certification. There's very little information needed. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Agricultural businesses that we can accept applications from include businesses engaged in the production of food and fiber, ranching and raising of livestock, aquaculture, and all other farming and ag-related industries. We are encouraging any eligible agricultural business with 500 or fewer employees to submit an application to our program. When you apply, SBA will determine the amount of your loan based on the amount of working capital needs of the business in order for it to continue to pay its obligations that the business would have paid had this event not occurred. The interest rates on the loan are 3.75% for small businesses, and if there are any agricultural nonprofit organizations, the interest rate is 2.75%. Terms on the loans are 30 years. The payments are deferred for 1 year. As I mentioned, they're working capital loans. They are designed to allow the business owner to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that the business could have paid had this disaster not occurred. They are not, however, intended to replace lost profits or lost sales. We do require collateral on some of the loans, but as a result of this pandemic, our collateral requirements have been significantly reduced. There is no collateral for loans of $25,000 or less. For loans of $25,000 or more up to $200,000, SBA is taking a general security interest, or what's commonly called a UCC filing, against the business assets to secure those loans over $25,000. SBA will not decline an application for a lack of collateral. There's no cost to apply. There's no obligation to take the loan if we offer it to you. And borrowers that currently have SBA loans, including existing SBA disaster loans, are eligible for the economic injury disaster loans as long as they meet our standard criteria. But these loans cannot be consolidated with the new loan. So one of my very first assignments when I started out with SBA was up in South Dakota during the 1993 floods. And even though that's almost 30 years, there's probably still some loans that are outstanding from that event, but those kinds of loans cannot be consolidated. When you go into the application portal, we're going to be looking for, like I say, or said earlier, it's almost all self-certification. What are we looking for? Well, is the business an agricultural enterprise with not more than 500 employees? We're looking for the business's legal name, its trade name, its EIN number, or a social security number if the business is a sole prop. We want to know what the organization type of the business is and what's its business activity. And going back to the 500 employees, we want to know what the number of employees are. For the 12-month period prior to January 31st of this year, which is kind of the starting point or the kickoff point, if you will, for this disaster, we would be looking for the 12 months prior to that, your gross revenues, cost of goods sold, or the cost of operations, your basic operating expenses. And then we're going to ask you if you've had any other compensation from any other source that has been made available to you to help overcome the effects of the COVID-19. And if you have that money, if it duplicates our loan, it can reduce the amount of our loan. On the EIDL application in the what we're calling the Rapid Portal, it's the online application. We're asking in this event, and this is the first time it's ever happened, SBA is making EIDL grants available. And these are grants of up to $10,000, and they're based on the number of employees that a business has. But there is a limit of 10,000, and we count each employee as available as $1,000. So for each employee, you can get $1,000, but up to a maximum of $10,000. That is a grant. It does not have to be repaid, and it is not predicated on you getting or accepting the EIDL loan. We're looking for you to provide your bank account information, where the funds are going to be deposited when we do the EIDL advance or make you an EIDL loan. The EIDL advance can and probably will be subtracted from any PPP forgiveness that you may have. And the main thing is, in order to avoid any kind of a duplication of benefits, the loans, PPP and EIDL, can't be used to cover the exact same expense. But as Jamie pointed out, the PPP loan has a certain time frame for which you can use it for payroll. Our loan does not have any kinds of limitations like that. Our loans, like I said, can be used to cover fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, things that the business would have normally paid. And as Jamie said, I got some lending data too. In South Dakota, SBA has made a little over 3,600 loans for more than $250 million. And we have also approved EIDL advances to South Dakota, and a little more than 11,250 loans for another $33.3 million. And those numbers obviously go up daily, so they change from day to day. But we do have the funds available, so I encourage anyone out there that you know of, whether it's a farm or a small business that's not ag-related, to apply for a loan as soon as they can. And with that, Jamie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much for that update. And I was glad to hear those EIDL numbers for South Dakota. I didn't have those going into this, so that's great to hear. And as everyone here can hear, there's just so much infusion going on in South Dakota. We actually, and maybe you know this, Dan, I'm not sure, but what we did hear, even as late as 2 or 3 weeks ago, is that South Dakota actually was ranked in the top 5. I think we were number 3 actually for the response effort for leveraging EIDL and PPP, and so we were, especially PPP, during this time, the last few weeks. And so that really says something even about this network right here of how, we're communicating and making sure that people understand that these value-added resources are here during emergency. And the whole point of this is to help businesses sustain, just stay alive and be able to come out of this, in a stronger way. So what we're seeing from 1 week to the next, like Rick mentioned, is that the numbers are still going up. For PPP, what I did not mention, but I really want to make sure that it's understood, that there's only like 2 weeks left, under 2 weeks left to actually use it. So June 30th is when the clock starts ticking, as we know it right now, for leveraging PPP. So if you have an inkling to, leverage the PPP, go in and talk to your local lender and see. If you have an inkling to leverage the EIDL, we recommend that you do that as well. And there is no prepayment penalty on the EIDL, and you do not have to accept the loan. If you, get qualified for it, you don't have to accept it, but it's a great, actually sharp tool in your toolkit for survivability for your business right now. So is the PPP. And these loans are still, the most unprecedented that we've ever had in the nation for small businesses, because we're learning as we're going. And the whole point of all this is to keep people employed and off of unemployment. And we really want businesses to stay alive. So we'd love to open it up for some questions. I did a little test to see who I could unmute. I was able to unmute Rick, but I can't unmute anybody else. So somebody else must have the controls to be able to do that. And I hope that we can answer your questions tonight. So let's go. We can also work the chat too. So. And Dan, did you have any thing you wanted to add?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. While we're just waiting to get questions spooled up, would be remiss if I didn't just reinforce what Jamie said about South Dakota and the collaboration in particular in that state, whether it's been the Farm Bureau Network, working in partnership with the governor's Office of Economic Development, all these chambers of commerce. I mean, South Dakota really has done a fantastic job on this program. And I just think it speaks to the culture of collaboration that you have there, as well as the strong relationships of the people and the great work that Jamie's been able to do as well. So it would just be remiss if I didn't reinforce that, Jamie.
Oh, I appreciate that. And we have a wonderful team here that has reached far and wide across the ecosystem. So just a little bit of trivia, I guess, for you. We've gotten this question the last several days, last couple of weeks actually, on how many webinars do you actually do? And we're so thankful for these platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Shindig and all sorts of different types of platforms to be able to keep communicating, even though we had to do it, virtually from a distance. The business still got done, and even lenders were using some of the technical platforms to be able to do their loans with the small businesses. And so it's really been wonderful to keep it moving. And a little, I guess icing on the cake would be that there's no more excuses about snow. So we know that we still have to show up on the blizzard days now. And we're glad to be able to do that here, at least in the South Dakota SBA office. So Dan's leadership, he has 6 states that he covers, and South Dakota is just one. South Dakota, North Dakota, Utah, Wyoming, Nevada, Colorado, and Montana. So he has quite a wide range out here, and we're lucky to get his time because he's also our newly appointed, as you may well know, our Rural Affairs Director for in a national capacity for SBA. So he is covering all of the United States for rural outreach, and really thankful to be able to have Dan here tonight with us. So, and if there's any questions that want to be typed in the chat, we can take those right now. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and type in our contact info. And please feel free to look us up or contact us directly. You can do it by phone. You can also do it by email. And our office here in Sioux Falls, also in Rapid City, they're not open to the general public yet, but our staff is back in Sioux Falls. And we are, we're filtering and just really answering lots of questions every day still. The pace is a little less hectic as it was earlier a few weeks ago, and I think that is kind of indicative how it's smoothing out, and people are really getting the funds that they need to sustain. So that's good, but we are still growing on those loans, and even in the last week, it went up over $2 million worth of loans, and $2 million worth of loans, and in the last 2 weeks, it's gone up almost $5 million in loans. So we know that the need is still there. Some people are feeling the pinch now more than they were a few weeks ago, and others are now eligible that weren't. And here's something I think that's important to talk about too. This is one of our most recent updates that we've had for people that have had felonies previously. When and a lot of, we know that sometimes ag production or construction or certain types of career fields like that through self-employment are what formerly, felons or formerly incarcerated can do. So I wanted to share that with this network that it has been reduced. Originally for PPP, you could not have a felony within the last 5 years. It just got reduced down to 1 year, but there are some caveats with that. So your felony could not have been for fraud or embezzlement or trying to falsely apply for federal lending or things like that. So there's a little bit of caveat on there, but for many previous felony holders, they actually could apply as long as it was over 1 year ago. So that's some good news for many small businesses in South Dakota. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and type in our contact information, and if anybody else has questions, you can contact us or you can type them in the chat and we can answer them. All right.
Jamie, I'd like to ask a question of Rick. So first of all, I want to thank you both for your updates and also for Dan being on the call. I know EIDL was a program that we had a lot of interest in terms of, just applying for that assistance for employees, essentially. Had some questions from some folks that applied and realized that they could claim themselves as an employee, as they were applying for maybe the $1,000, per employee assistance. If someone applied and maybe didn't fill out that information accurately, are they able to go back and still request additional dollars, or how does that work if somebody feels like they made an error in the original application? We'll have to figure out how to unmute.
I'm not sure if Rick is still here. I don't see his.
Yeah, he's there. It's the 916 number at the bottom.
What's at the bottom? Okay.
Yeah, we just have to unmute him.
Okay, sounds like I'm back. Can you hear me, Jamie?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. To answer that question, when someone filled out the EIDL advance and maybe put in incorrect by not claiming themselves, and they listed it as 0, we still counted them as one employee. So they were still eligible for the EIDL advance for themselves as that single employee. But if somebody miscounted or entered incorrect, if they had 6 employees but only entered 1, we don't have the ability to go back right now and correct that because the way the process works, it's kind of an automated process, and it's been moving through the system as rapidly as we can. But for those that, like I said, that either listed 0 or 1, then we count them as 1, but we are unable to go back and correct incorrect information that was entered for that number of employees.
Sure. Okay. And that's very helpful. So we had actually a board member who filled out the application as the spouse but under the name of her husband. And I guess she did receive EIDL advance, and she thought maybe it was an error, and she was worried about utilizing the dollars because because she hadn't claimed anyone. So I think, you know, there's just some question marks about some of that. And so that will help clarify it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick, could you talk a little before we just wanted to say, Rick, could you just also talk about any applications that maybe were made before, and you might have already talked about this, but we're getting still a lot of questions about it at the district office for people that maybe made an application before April 3rd or 4th, before the online applications started, and they might be waiting still to hear.
Okay, that's kind of a long question with a long answer, but I'll try to be as succinct as I can. When this event first started, we were accepting applications in our system the way it was prior to COVID-19. And that system had some issues. So when people applied, particularly before March 29th, they received an application number that began with the number 2. A few of those applications were in fact processed, but not a lot. So we sent out an email to anyone that had an application that began with the number 2 and asked them to go into the Rapid portal and reapply in essence. And when they did that, they received an application number that began with the number 3. And then those applications were processed as though that was the original application that was submitted, because it was married up to the original application with number 2. But we know that not all people went back in and applied for whatever reason. Maybe the email went to a spam folder, or maybe they just didn't see the email, or maybe they thought they would wait, or a whole host of reasons. So we fast forward, and then later on in April, the application portal was closed, which means no one could apply because of a funding issue. Well, we received additional funding, but that application portal was reopened, but only to agricultural businesses. Now, we knew that there were still a lot of people out there that had original applications with the number 2. And we still tried to get them to go in and apply. And then we married those new applications that began with number 3 to their old number 2, and we went ahead and processed them, even though at that time it was only open to agricultural businesses. Unfortunately, there was a few applications that did receive an email that said, "You're a non-agriculture business. We are not processing your application because of that." But because they had originally applied back in March, we married those applications and tried to identify everyone that we could and went ahead and processed them. Now, fast forward to June 15th, and the application portal is now open to everyone again, ag, non-ag businesses. So those people can apply, and new businesses can come in and apply as well. Now, the last part of this complicated answer, and I apologize, I hope I'm making it as clear as I can. There were some folks that received an email because they were a non-agriculture business. They had never applied before. They applied when it was only open to ag businesses, and they got an email from us that said, "You're not an ag business. It's not open. We are not processing your application." We are in the process of sending emails to those individuals to say, "Hey, it's open, but you've already applied, so we're going to activate it. We're going to process your application, but you don't need to do anything." And they are receiving those emails even as we are talking on the phone right now. And that's my best answer, Jamie.
It was good. Thank you. It was way better than I could do. But the reason why I wanted you to mention it, even though that we're pretty much focusing on ag production right now, but I wanted to also, just kind of throw it out there, because a lot of times we collectively, SBA might not consider this, or other ones too, but I know from being from a very small town that connection between ag producers and Main Street small town America is very connected. In fact, a lot of the ag producers, them or their families own second businesses that are non-ag really, that are in small towns on Main Street. And so many of them may have already applied previously for EIDL when it first opened up, when they, they made an application that wasn't ag based. So we're kind of have all the industries are in the same pool as far as applying now for EIDL and for PPP. And hopefully the synopsis tonight has kind of given you an overview, and we're definitely glad to answer any more questions.
Jamie, this is Scott Vanderwall, President of South Dakota Farm Bureau. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Scott.
Well, thank you, first of all, for all three of you for being with us tonight. It's been very informative. I just have a quick question on the number of employees for both types of applications. In our situation with our farm, we have about 6 people, and really none of us is actually full-time. So I'm wondering, when it asks for number of employees, does that mean full-time equivalents or just number of people?
Number of people.
Okay.
And on the EIDL program, number of employees. That's what we're looking for.
Okay. Then we did it right. We discussed that with the banker, and that's what we decided to do. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was kind of a clarity came out on that a few weeks ago, but we are still receiving that question. So I'm glad that you asked it again. But yeah, it's really not, it's not full-time employees are looking for, they're looking for number. Yeah, and the turnaround time on the EIDL answers for the ag loans has been very quick, really, really fast. So the Office of Disaster Assistance has just done a remarkable job on that. We did receive over 5 million applications. I don't know if we mentioned that earlier or not, but it's just an astounding number to be able to process. And so SBA has really reached out and hired thousands of extra loan processing officers, and also customer service representatives in the Office of Disaster Assistance to help mitigate these, all the magnitude of the loans. And so that's moving along a lot faster than what it was. It took a little bit of time to ramp up. Understandable, because this was just, it was a lot, for us. And so we're really excited about where it's going, and the agency is still continuing to build the bench of loan officers to process these loans, and it's going to get faster and faster. And we're just really excited to be able to meet the need of, all different types of industry for this right now.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic resource. I'm not seeing additional questions. And again, just want to reiterate that we are recording tonight's conversation, and it will be on our COVID page at South Dakota Farm Bureau's website, which is sdfbf.org. And Jamie, just want to thank you so much for providing all of the contact information as well. And certainly you are all being very generous with your time and information. So thank you so much for being on. I guess I'd give one more opportunity for any last questions before we wrap up. Well, excellent. Jamie and Rick and Dan, thank you so much for your service to the agriculture industry. We understand that the Small Business Administration, that we're kind of a new constituency group for this organization, and we just want to thank you for your diligence in offering resources for us during this COVID period. So with that, I think, again, just thank you, and please check back to the South Dakota Farm Bureau website for this recording.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.